right, so in this video, we're going to go over how to work with the UI system in Unity. And what I mean by UI is basically the information that is overlaid on top of your camera view when you are interacting with your three-dimensional scene. So as we move around with the first-person controller, this information kind of sticks with you. So we'll learn about how to do text, how to do images, how to do cool slider elements, so we can do things like this, or like kind of like health or timers, and we'll look at all of that. So in Unity, the way that they work with the canvas is a little bit interesting at first glance. So we can create a UI canvas. So this is the element that holds all of the images and text and buttons, etc. So make the canvas. You want to make sure that there is an event system in there. Sometimes, you might be noticing that like clicks aren't working and you're like, why does my click not register? Just double check that there's an event system. If you accidentally delete it or it's not there for some reason, you can make one also in the UI menu, so an event system here. So the canvas, it lives overlaid on top of the camera in the game view. So any text I make in my game view, it'll be overlaid and kind of stick on top of the camera. But in my scene view, if I double click on the canvas, it actually lives in the scene view as well, but it lives huge and gigantic and kind of off to the side. So we're like way zoomed out right now. This is where your UI will go, but notice how it's like I have to zoom all the way back in to see where my cube is, right? And then the canvas is like zoomed way out. So basically, you just have to kind of live with this thing existing over here and just accept the fact that this is where it is. I don't really have a good explanation for why. It was confusing to me at first as well, but this is where the canvas is. And then where it shows up is in the game view, it will show up overlaid on top of the camera. We can look at some of the settings here. So basically in this little canvas render mode, it's in the overlay mode. It's overlaid on top of the camera view. You can also put it in the world space, so you can have text kind of existing in 3D as opposed to overlaid on top of the camera. So this is also something that you can play around with. That if you choose this, you can resize your canvas and shrink it down so it actually fits into the size of your world. But we're going to primarily be looking at it here in the overlay space. So how do you, once we have our canvas made, let's just put some text on the inside and look at how the resizing and positioning works for UI elements. So under our create menu, we can create UI text. So notice that it gets kind of created here in our 3D space so you can see it. But also, if we click over to our game view, this is where it is. So this square correlates to the size of our camera view in our game. So here's where the text is. And if we wanted to move it around, we could go to the move tool and we could just drag it around like this. But a better way to do it is by using the Rect Transform. So this is something that allows us to both resize our text box. So you notice I can change the width, I can change the height, right? So I can change the size. But I could also change where my text box is anchored to in the space. So this is the anchor point of our box. So if the so if I rotate it, it would rotate around where that anchor point is, right? Around where the pivot point is. And so in order to change the position of our text, we can click on the Rect Transform and it opens up this box. Now notice how when you first open it, it just says anchor presets. So right now, if I just click these boxes, all it does is move that anchor point. But if I hold shift, it'll also set the pivot point. So notice how it kind of changes to show. So we can change here. It looks like pretty much the same when we do that. But then if I hit Alt, I can also set the position. So notice how if I click Alt, the Transform tool kind of changes again. So I can hold Shift and Alt to kind of pop and change my box around to be, hey, do I want it like exactly in the center? Do I want it center left, center right, right? So you can really, really easily position it here. And the cool thing about this is like, okay, I want it in the top right or top left. Now I can set it, I want it top left, but I want it 10 units away and 10 units down. So I want a little bit of padding. And if I was just going to move it into the corner, it might be really hard for me to get exactly kind of a 10-10 padding. So if we use the Rect Transform to position stuff, we can really get things like positioned in the corner and things like that. So we have our text over here in the corner. If we scroll down, well, here's the text component. So we can do things like type in here, like, this is my text, right? So we can type in to change what the text is. We can change our font. Right now, the default font is Arial. If I was going to use a different font, I would have to drag and drop the font scene into my assets folder, and then I would be able to select it. So I have to import in my font. But we can change the style, the size. Notice how if it gets too big, it clips off. So that's an important thing to note. You would have to make the width of the text box much wider, so it clips when it gets too big. We can change the alignment within the text box and the color. So all of this stuff, right? Basically text formatting. One thing to note here is that the text component has a text attribute. This is the thing that we will primarily be accessing with code to change what the text is saying. So text.text. This is something to remember. All right, so I'm going to stop here, and then in our next video, we're going to go over how do you use scripting to access what your text component is saying.